The notice taped to my front door flapped in the February wind like a surrender flag, except I had done nothing wrong. I pulled it free and read the words that made my blood boil. Violation notice. Unauthorized fuel storage. Fine. $500. Immediate removal required within 48 hours or face daily fines of $100. My name is Brian Owens, and I had just been fined by the Pine Ridge Homeowners Association in Traverse City, Michigan, for keeping a completely legal, properly installed diesel fuel tank on my property. The tank held winter diesel, the only thing keeping my backup generator running during the brutal northern Michigan winters when power outages could last for days. Last year, my elderly neighbor nearly froze to death during a 3-day blackout. I refused to let that happen to my family. I crumpled the notice in my fist and stormed back into my house, where my wife Sarah was making coffee in our warm kitchen. She took one look at my face and set down the pot. "What is it now?" she asked. "The HOA. They are fining us for the diesel tank. The one the fire marshal inspected last month. The one that passed with flying colors. That is the one." Sarah shook her head and poured me a cup of coffee. We had moved to this subdivision 3 years ago, drawn by the promise of quiet streets and good schools for our 2 kids. For the first year, everything was fine. Then Patricia Henderson became HOA president, and suddenly every minor detail of our lives was subject to scrutiny, fines, and threats. Patricia was everything you would expect from a stereotypical HOA tyrant. Mid-50s, perfectly coiffed blonde hair, designer athleisure wear that she wore to board meetings like it was business formal, and an attitude that suggested she believed the entire neighborhood existed to validate her need for control. Her husband was some kind of executive who traveled constantly, leaving Patricia with unlimited time to police the neighborhood with the dedication of a prison warden. I pulled out my phone and called the fire department. Chief Tom Reynolds answered on the 3rd ring. "Chief Reynolds, this is Brian Owens on Maple Grove Drive. I need a favor. Can you send me a copy of the inspection report you did on my diesel storage tank last month?" "Sure thing, Brian. Everything's still running smoothly. The tank is perfect. The HOA is not. They are trying to fine me for having it." Chief Reynolds let out a long whistle. "That is Patricia Henderson's doing, I would bet. She called here last week asking about residential fuel storage regulations. I told her that your setup exceeds all safety standards. Best installation I have seen in a residential setting, actually. Would you be willing to put that in writing?" "Already did. I will email you the full report within the hour. It explicitly states that your 500-gallon above-ground diesel tank meets all federal, state, and local safety codes. Double-walled construction, proper ventilation, appropriate setback from structures, the whole 9 yards. You even went above and beyond with the spill containment system." "Thank you, Chief. I appreciate it. No problem. Between you and me, that HOA needs to find better things to do with their time. We have had 3 calls this month alone from residents asking about regulations because Patricia is threatening them over something or other." I hung up and checked my email obsessively for the next 40 minutes until Chief Reynolds' report came through. It was even better than I remembered. 4 pages of technical documentation, photographs, and a final summary that explicitly stated my fuel storage system exceeds all applicable safety standards and poses no risk to the surrounding properties or residents. Armed with this document, I drafted a formal response to the HOA, citing the fire chief's report and requesting an immediate rescission of the fine. I sent it via certified mail and email, making sure to copy every member of the HOA board. Then I waited. The response came faster than I expected. That evening, my doorbell rang just as we were sitting down to dinner. Through the window, I could see Patricia Henderson standing on my porch, arms crossed, her face pinched in that expression of perpetual disapproval she had perfected. I opened the door but did not invite her in. "Mr. Owens, we need to discuss your refusal to comply with HOA regulations." "There is nothing to discuss. I am in full compliance with all applicable laws and safety codes. The fire chief confirmed it." "The fire chief does not dictate HOA policy. I do. The board does." "Actually, Patricia, the law dictates what I can and cannot do on my property. The HOA cannot create rules that contradict state and federal regulations." Her eyes narrowed. "The covenants clearly state that no industrial equipment or commercial storage is permitted on residential properties. A diesel tank for emergency backup power is neither industrial equipment nor commercial storage. It is a residential safety measure." "That is your interpretation." "That is the fire chief's professional opinion, backed by 40 years of experience and state certification." Patricia's face flushed red. "This is not over, Mr. Owens. The fine stands. If you do not remove that eyesore within 48 hours, the daily fines begin, and they will continue until you comply or we place a lien on your property." She turned and marched back to her white Mercedes SUV before I could respond. Sarah appeared at my shoulder. "She is really going to push this, is not she?" "Looks that way." The next morning, I called my attorney, Marcus Webb, who had helped us with the home purchase. After explaining the situation and forwarding him all the documentation, he was silent for a long moment. "Brian, I am going to be straight with you. You are completely in the right here. The problem is that HOAs can make your life miserable even when they are wrong. The legal fees to fight this could exceed the fines, at least in the short term. So you are saying I should just remove the tank? I am saying you need to decide if this is the hill you want to die on. Personally, if I were you, I would fight it. What they are doing is clearly overreach, and the fire chief's report is ironclad. But it will cost you time, money, and peace of mind. My family's safety is worth all of that. Then let me draft a formal legal response. I will cite the relevant state statutes and make it clear that any attempt to fine you or lien your property will result in a lawsuit for harassment and violation of your property rights. Do it." Marcus had his letter delivered to Patricia and the entire HOA board within 24 hours. The 48-hour deadline came and went. No one came to check if I had removed the tank, because of course I had not. I went about my normal routine, taking my kids to school, going to work at my job as a mechanical engineer at a local manufacturing plant, coming home to normal family dinners. Then the next fine notice arrived. This one claimed I owed $600 in total, the original $500 plus the first day of the $100 daily fine. Attached was a stern warning that continued non-compliance would result in legal action. I forwarded it to Marcus, who called me that afternoon. "They are not backing down. I think we need to escalate this. I am going to file a formal complaint with the Michigan Attorney General's office. HOAs are supposed to operate within certain legal boundaries, and this is a clear case of overreach. I am also going to request an emergency hearing to prevent them from placing any lien on your property." "How long will that take?" "Couple of weeks for the hearing." The AG complaint could take months, but it will create a paper trail that shows a pattern of abuse if they are doing this to other residents. Chief Reynolds mentioned they have been harassing other people too. Then we might have grounds for a class action if other residents want to join. But let us take this one step at a time. The weekend brought an unexpected development. I was out front, clearing snow from my driveway, when my neighbor Jerry Thompson walked over. Jerry lived 2 houses down and kept mostly to himself. We exchanged pleasantries at neighborhood gatherings, but were not close friends. "Brian, you got a minute?" "Sure, what is up?" Jerry glanced around nervously. "I heard about your trouble with Patricia and the HOA. News travels fast. This is a small neighborhood. Listen, she has been after me too. I put up a basketball hoop for my son last summer. Regulation height, professional installation, the whole thing. She claimed it was an unapproved structure and fined me $1,000. Did you fight it?" "I paid it." I know. But I was trying to refinance my house, and I could not afford any complications with the HOA. Now I am kicking myself because she knows she can push me around. You should talk to my attorney. If there are multiple victims, we might have a stronger case." Jerry shifted his weight from foot to foot. "That is why I came over. There are at least 4 other families she has targeted in the last 6 months. The Johnsons got fined for their garden gnomes. The Petersons for parking their RV in their own driveway for a weekend. The Martins for painting their shutters a shade of green that was not on the approved color list, even though it was barely different from the approved one. She is out of control. She is on a power trip, and no one wants to stand up to her because everyone is afraid of the fines and the hassle. But Brian, if you are fighting this, I think others would join you. We are all just waiting for someone to take the lead. This changed things. I was not just fighting for my own property rights anymore. This was about stopping a bully who had been terrorizing an entire neighborhood. Tell the others to document everything. Every fine, every interaction, every piece of correspondence. Have them contact my attorney. His name is Marcus Webb." Jerry shook my hand with visible relief. "Thank you, seriously. Someone needed to stand up to her." Over the next week, Marcus was contacted by 6 different families from Pine Ridge, all with similar stories of excessive fines, arbitrary rule enforcement, and Patricia's aggressive tactics. Marcus compiled all the documentation into a comprehensive complaint that painted a clear picture of HOA abuse. Meanwhile, I received my 3rd fine notice, claiming I now owed $800. I filed it with the others and waited for the emergency hearing Marcus had requested. The hearing was scheduled for a Wednesday afternoon at the Grand Traverse County Courthouse. Judge Ellen Martinez presided, a no-nonsense woman in her early 60s with a reputation for cutting through legal nonsense. Patricia showed up with the HOA's attorney, a nervous-looking young man named Craig Bennett, who looked like he had just passed the bar exam last month. Marcus presented our case methodically. He entered the fire chief's report into evidence, cited Michigan property law, and demonstrated that the HOA's fine was not based on any legitimate safety concern or legal violation. He then presented the complaints from the other 6 families, showing a pattern of overreach and abuse. Patricia's attorney tried to argue that the HOA had broad authority to regulate property use under the covenants. Judge Martinez was not impressed. "Mr. Bennett, I have reviewed the covenants. Nothing in them prohibits residential fuel storage for emergency backup power. Furthermore, the fire chief's report clearly states that Mr. Owens' installation exceeds all safety standards. On what basis is the HOA claiming this violates their rules?" Bennett shuffled through his papers. "Your Honor, the board has interpreted the prohibition on industrial and commercial equipment to include large fuel storage tanks. Does Mr. Owens operate a business from his home?" "No, Your Honor." "Is he storing fuel for commercial purposes?" "No, Your Honor." "Then how is this commercial or industrial?" Bennett had no good answer. Judge Martinez turned her attention to Patricia, who sat rigid in her chair. "Mrs. Henderson, are you the president of the Pine Ridge HOA?" "Yes, Your Honor." Did you personally initiate the fine against Mr. Owens? The board voted on it, but you brought it to the board's attention. Patricia hesitated. Yes. Despite being informed by the fire chief that the installation met all safety standards, I do not believe a fuel tank of that size belongs in a residential neighborhood. Judge Martinez leaned forward. What you believe is irrelevant. What matters is what the law allows and what the covenants actually say. From what I can see, you have been using your position to impose your personal preferences on your neighbors, backing them up with fines that have no legal basis. Your Honor, I am simply trying to maintain property values and neighborhood standards. By targeting residents who have done nothing wrong, by fining people for basketball hoops and garden decorations, by imposing penalties that bear no relation to any actual violation. Patricia's face turned scarlet. She started to respond, but Judge Martinez cut her off. I am issuing an immediate injunction preventing the Pine Ridge HOA from collecting any fines related to Mr. Owens' diesel storage tank. Furthermore, I am ordering the HOA to rescind all fines issued in the 6 cases presented today. Mr. Bennett, I suggest your client review her understanding of HOA authority before she finds herself facing a lawsuit that could bankrupt your entire organization. The gavel came down, and just like that, I had won. But I could see in Patricia's eyes that she was not done. People like her did not accept defeat gracefully. I walked out of the courthouse with Marcus, who was practically glowing. That went better than I expected. Judge Martinez clearly saw through Patricia's act. You think this is over? Marcus sobered. No. She is going to be angry, and angry people make mistakes. Stay alert and keep documenting everything. His warning proved prophetic. 2 days after the hearing, I came home from work to find a citation from the City Code Enforcement Office taped to my door. Someone had filed a complaint about my diesel tank, claiming it violated city ordinances. I called the number listed and spoke with a weary-sounding inspector named Frank Delgado. Mr. Owens, I have to follow up on all complaints. I know this is probably related to your HOA situation. Can I come by tomorrow morning to inspect the tank? Absolutely. I have nothing to hide. Frank arrived at 8 the next morning, carrying a clipboard and a measuring tape. He spent 20 minutes examining the tank, checking clearances, reviewing my installation permits, and taking photographs. Finally, he straightened up and shook his head. Mr. Owens, this is one of the best residential installations I have seen. You have permits, it meets all codes, and it is clearly well maintained. I have no idea why someone filed a complaint. I know exactly why. Patricia Henderson from the HOA, Frank grimaced. I cannot comment on who filed the complaint, but let me just say that we have received an unusual number of complaints from your neighborhood in the past 6 months. All very minor issues, most of them not actual violations. It is eating up a lot of our department's time. Is there anything I can do? Just keep your documentation. I will file a report stating there is no violation. If she files another complaint, we will investigate, but if it is clearly frivolous, we can pursue harassment charges against the complainant. That evening, I received a call from Jerry Thompson. He sounded panicked. Brian, Patricia just sent out an email to the entire neighborhood. She is calling an emergency HOA meeting for tomorrow night. The agenda is to vote on a special assessment to cover legal fees and to discuss enhanced covenant enforcement. She is trying to rally support. Worse, she is lying about what happened in court. The email says the judge told you to remove the tank within 90 days and that you are defying a court order. My jaw dropped. That is completely false. The judge ruled in my favor. I know that, but a lot of people in the neighborhood were not at the hearing. They are just going to read this email and believe her. Forward me that email right now." The email was even worse than Jerry described. Patricia had twisted the judge's words, misrepresented the outcome, and portrayed me as a dangerous radical who was putting the neighborhood at risk. She was also proposing a $5,000 special assessment on every property to build a legal defense fund for protecting neighborhood values. I forwarded the email to Marcus immediately. He called me within minutes. "Brian, this is defamation. She is knowingly making false statements that could damage your reputation. We can sue her personally for this. I want to go to the meeting tomorrow and set the record straight. That is risky. She will control the meeting and she can shut you down. Then you come with me. Bring copies of the court order. Let people see the truth." The meeting was held in the community center at 7 in the evening. When I arrived with Marcus and Sarah, the parking lot was packed. Apparently, the promise of drama had brought out nearly every household in Pine Ridge. The community center could hold maybe 80 people, and it was standing room only. Patricia stood at the front podium, looking confident and composed. She had printouts of her false email stacked on the table beside her, along with copies of a proposed new covenant that would have given the HOA board near dictatorial powers over property use. The meeting started with roll call and approval of previous minutes. Then Patricia launched into her prepared remarks. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice. As you know, we are facing an unprecedented challenge to the authority and integrity of this HOA. One resident has decided that the rules do not apply to him, and he has hired expensive lawyers to bully your elected board. Now, a judge has given him 90 days to remove his dangerous fuel storage tank, but he is refusing. This puts all of us at risk." I stood up. "That is a lie." Patricia glared at me. "Mr. Owens, you are out of order. Sit down." "No, you just lied to everyone in this room. The judge did not give me 90 days to remove anything. The judge ruled in my favor and ordered you to rescind the fines." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Patricia's face flushed. "You are disrupting this meeting. Security, please escort Mr. Owens out." Marcus stood up beside me. "Mrs. Henderson, I am Marcus Webb, Mr. Owens' attorney. I have copies of the actual court order right here. Would you like me to read it to everyone, or would you like to stop lying?" The room went silent. Patricia looked like she had been slapped. "I am adjourning this meeting." "You cannot adjourn a meeting just because you are being called out on your lies," shouted a voice from the back. I recognized it as Jerry Thompson. "We all got your email. If what they are saying is true, you lied to all of us." Other voices joined in, demanding to see the court order. Marcus made his way to the front of the room and handed out copies to anyone who wanted one. People started reading, and the mood in the room shifted rapidly. Patricia tried to regain control, banging a gavel on the podium, but no one was listening to her anymore. Finally, an older man I recognized as Bill Crawford, who lived on the corner of the subdivision, stood up. Bill was retired military, a former colonel who had always struck me as fair-minded and level-headed. "Patricia, I have sat on HOA boards before, and I have never seen anything like this. You lied to this community. You abused your authority. And from what I am hearing, you have been doing it for months. I move that we vote tonight on removing you as president and launching a full audit of HOA finances." "You cannot do that without proper notice," Patricia sputtered. Bill pulled out a copy of the HOA bylaws. "Actually, according to Article 7, Section 3, any board member can be removed by a 2/3 vote of the membership present at any properly noticed meeting. You noticed this meeting. You got everyone here. Let us have the vote." The motion was seconded immediately. Patricia's attorney tried to intervene, but Bill shut him down. Son, unless you are a member of this HOA, you have no standing here. Sit down. The vote was not even close. Out of 73 homeowners present, 64 voted to remove Patricia as president. The remaining 9 were her close friends who left in a huff when the results were announced. Patricia stood at the podium, her face pale, clutching her papers like they could protect her. "This is illegal. I will sue all of you." "No, Patricia," Bill said calmly. "What you have been doing is illegal. Now get out of here before we call the police." She left, but not before sweeping all her papers onto the floor in a final childish gesture. After she was gone, the meeting continued. Bill was elected as the new president by acclamation. The proposed special assessment was voted down unanimously, and a motion to rescind all fines issued during Patricia's tenure passed easily. I thought it was over. I was wrong. 3 days later, I woke up to the sound of sirens. I looked out my bedroom window and saw fire trucks in front of my house. I pulled on clothes and ran outside, where firefighters were examining my diesel tank. Chief Reynolds saw me and walked over. "Brian, someone called 911 and reported that your tank was leaking and there was a strong smell of diesel." "That is impossible. I just checked it 2 days ago." "I know. There is no leak, no smell, nothing. This was a false report." "Let me guess. Patricia Henderson." Chief Reynolds shook his head. "The call came from a burner phone, so we cannot trace it. But yes, I would bet money it was her. This is the 3rd false report we have gotten this week from your neighborhood. Someone reported a gas leak at Jerry Thompson's house yesterday. Before that, it was a supposed electrical fire at the Peterson place. All false, all from burner phones. Can you do anything about it? We are documenting everything. If we can prove who is making these calls, they will face charges for false reporting and misuse of emergency services. That is a felony in Michigan." The harassment continued. Over the next 2 weeks, police were called to my house 3 times for fabricated noise complaints. City inspectors showed up for anonymous reports about unpermitted construction, zoning violations, and even an absurd claim that I was running an illegal business. Each time, the complaints were baseless. Each time, more of my time and energy was wasted dealing with the fallout. The other families who had joined the case were experiencing similar harassment. The Johnsons had their tires slashed. The Petersons found their mailbox smashed. The Martins received threatening letters with no return address. I called Marcus after the latest incident, a false report to Child Protective Services claiming I was neglecting my children. That one really got to me because a CPS investigator actually showed up at my house and interviewed my kids. Of course, they found nothing wrong, but the experience terrified my 10-year-old daughter. "This has to stop," I told Marcus. "She is escalating." "I agree. I think it is time to get law enforcement involved. These are not just civil disputes anymore. This is criminal harassment and possibly stalking. I'm going to set up a meeting with the county prosecutor." The meeting happened 2 days later. Marcus, Bill Crawford, Jerry Thompson, and I sat down with Assistant Prosecutor Jennifer Walsh in her office at the county courthouse. We brought 3 binders full of documentation, false reports, threatening letters, evidence of vandalism, records of all the bogus complaints to various city departments. Jennifer reviewed the materials for over an hour, making notes and asking questions. Finally, she looked up. "Gentlemen, you have a strong case for criminal harassment. The pattern is clear, and while you cannot prove definitively that Patricia Henderson is behind all of it, the circumstantial evidence is overwhelming. The timing alone tells the story. Everything started after she was removed as HOA president." "Can you prosecute?" I asked. "I can, but I would rather catch her in the act. Right now, everything is anonymous. Burner phones, unsigned letters, things happening when no one is around to witness. I need solid proof that directly ties her to at least one incident. How do we get that? Jennifer smiled. You set a trap. The plan was simple but required patience. I would install security cameras around my property, both visible and hidden ones. We would wait for the next incident and hopefully catch Patricia on camera. In the meantime, Bill Crawford would work with the new HOA board to review all of Patricia's financial records as HOA president. If she had been abusing her power in other ways, there might be evidence of financial misconduct as well. I bought a comprehensive security system that weekend. 6 cameras covered every angle of my property, including the diesel tank, the driveway, and both entrances to my house. 2 additional cameras were hidden and would only activate if someone approached certain areas after dark. The wait was shorter than I expected. 4 days after installing the cameras, I was woken at 2 in the morning by an alert on my phone. One of the hidden cameras had detected motion near the diesel tank. I pulled up the live feed and felt my pulse quicken. Patricia Henderson was in my yard, wearing dark clothes and carrying what looked like a gas can. I watched in disbelief as she poured something on the ground around the diesel tank and then appeared to be trying to loosen one of the valve connections. I called 911 immediately, then Marcus, then Jennifer Walsh. I kept the video feed running, making sure everything was being recorded to the cloud backup. Patricia spent about 5 minutes at the tank before headlights appeared on the street. She grabbed her gas can and ran toward the back of my property, disappearing into the shadows. The police arrived within minutes. I showed them the video feed, and they immediately put out a call for additional units to search the area. 20 minutes later, they found Patricia walking on a street 2 blocks away, still wearing the dark clothes, still carrying the gas can. The officers brought her to my house. She tried to claim she was just out for a late-night walk, but the excuse fell apart when they asked about the gas can and the dark clothing. When they told her they had video of her on my property, she went silent and demanded a lawyer. Patricia Henderson was arrested that night and charged with criminal trespass, attempted vandalism, and attempted arson. The arson charge came after fire investigators determined that the liquid she had poured around my tank was gasoline, and she had been carrying matches. If she had successfully damaged the tank or started a fire, the results could have been catastrophic. The arrest made the local news. The story of an HOA president turned vindictive criminal caught the attention of regional media, and soon reporters were calling me for interviews. I declined most of them, wanting to let the legal process play out, but the story was not quite finished. Bill Crawford called me a week after Patricia's arrest. "Brian, you need to see this. We finished the audit of the HOA finances." I went to his house, where he had spreadsheets and bank statements laid out across his dining room table. Patricia embezzled over $40,000 from the HOA over the past 2 years. My jaw dropped. How? Fake invoices mostly. She set up shell companies for landscaping, maintenance, and legal services. The HOA would write checks to these companies, and the money would end up in accounts controlled by her. She was not even subtle about it. She must have thought no one would ever check. "Does Jennifer Walsh know about this?" I called her this morning. "She is adding fraud and embezzlement charges to the case." The criminal case against Patricia Henderson moved through the court system over the next several months. Her attorney tried to negotiate a plea deal, but Jennifer Walsh was not interested. The evidence was too strong, the crimes too serious, and the impact on the community too significant. The trial lasted 3 days. I testified about the harassment, the false reports, and the night she tried to vandalize my diesel tank. The video footage was played for the jury, showing Patricia clearly pouring gasoline around the tank and attempting to damage the valves. Other residents testified about the vandalism, threats, and false reports they had experienced. The financial crimes were even more clear-cut. Bill Crawford walked the jury through the audit findings, showing how Patricia had systematically stolen from the HOA she was supposed to be serving. Bank records proved that the shell companies were controlled by her, and that the money had been used for personal expenses, including vacations, designer clothes, and jewelry. Patricia's defense was essentially non-existent. Her attorney tried to paint her as someone who had been under stress, who had let power go to her head, who had made mistakes but did not deserve prison. The jury was not sympathetic. They found her guilty on all counts: criminal harassment, stalking, trespass, attempted vandalism, attempted arson, fraud, and embezzlement. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. Judge Martinez, the same judge who had issued the original injunction, sentenced Patricia to 4 years in state prison, followed by 5 years of probation. She was also ordered to pay full restitution to the HOA and to each of the individual victims who had documented financial losses from her harassment campaign. I sat in the courtroom with Sarah when the sentence was read. Patricia stood before the judge, looking small and defeated, nothing like the imperious bully who had terrorized our neighborhood. Her husband sat in the back row, stone-faced. He filed for divorce the next week. After the sentencing, life in Pine Ridge slowly returned to normal. Bill Crawford proved to be an excellent HOA president, focusing on actual community needs rather than petty enforcement. The board revised the covenants to include clear protections against the kind of overreach Patricia had engaged in. They also implemented financial controls and oversight procedures to prevent future embezzlement. My diesel tank remained right where it was, and I never received another complaint about it. In fact, after a particularly bad ice storm that winter knocked out power to half the neighborhood for 4 days, 3 other families installed their own backup systems. The HOA approved everyone without question. Jerry Thompson became one of my closest friends. We built a basketball court in the community center, using some of the recovered embezzlement money, and our kids play there regularly. The Johnsons, Petersons, and Martins all remained in the neighborhood, and we have formed a tight-knit group that looks out for each other. I still think about Patricia sometimes, usually when I am filling the diesel tank or checking the generator. I wonder if she understands the irony of how her obsession with control ended up destroying her life. She had a comfortable existence, respect in the community, and the opportunity to actually help her neighbors. Instead, she chose to be a tyrant, and she paid the price. The case attracted attention from legal and HOA reform groups across the country. Marcus was interviewed by several publications about HOA overreach and how to fight it. Michigan even passed new legislation requiring HOA boards to receive training on legal limits of their authority and implementing stronger financial oversight requirements. As for me, I learned that standing up to bullies is hard, expensive, and time-consuming, but absolutely necessary. If I had just paid that first fine, Patricia would have continued her reign of terror. Other families would have suffered. The theft would have continued. Sometimes you have to fight, even when it is difficult, even when you are not sure you will win. 1 year after Patricia's sentencing, the new HOA board organized a neighborhood block party. It was a beautiful June evening, and nearly every family in Pine Ridge showed up. Kids ran around playing tag while adults grilled burgers and talked about normal things like work and vacation plans, and the Tigers' chances this season. Bill Crawford raised a glass and offered a toast to good neighbors, reasonable rules, and the importance of standing up for what is right. Everyone cheered. I looked around at the smiling faces, at Sarah laughing with the other wives, at my kids playing happily with their friends, at the diesel tank visible in my backyard that had started this whole saga, and I felt deeply satisfied. The system worked. Justice prevailed. A bully was stopped, and a community learned to stand together against tyranny, even the petty tyranny of a homeowners association gone wrong. I took a sip of my beer and smiled. My property was mine. My family was safe. And the diesel tank, that symbol of practical preparedness that had somehow become the focal point of a neighborhood war, sat peacefully in my backyard, ready to keep my generator running through whatever challenges the next winter might bring. Patricia Henderson would be released from prison in about 3 more years. I did not know if she would return to Traverse City or start fresh somewhere else. I hoped she had learned something from her time inside, though I suspected people like her rarely changed. It did not matter. She had no power over me anymore, no power over any of us. The HOA board continued to function smoothly under Bill's leadership. Property values in Pine Ridge actually increased, contrary to Patricia's dire predictions about what would happen if residents were allowed to have diesel tanks or basketball hoops or garden gnomes. Turns out people want to live in neighborhoods where they are treated like adults, not children subject to arbitrary rules enforced by petty tyrants. I went back to work, back to my normal life as a mechanical engineer. The case occasionally came up in conversation with coworkers who had followed it in the news, but mostly it faded into the background. Sarah joked that our 15 minutes of fame fighting HOA tyranny was probably enough excitement to last a lifetime. She was right. All I wanted was to live in peace, maintain my property the way I saw fit within reasonable laws, and keep my family safe and warm during Michigan winters. The diesel tank did exactly what I needed it to do, just as Chief Reynolds had confirmed from the beginning. It was safe, legal, and necessary. Everything else was just noise generated by someone who had confused authority with power and service with control. The criminal justice system had worked exactly as it should. Patricia's crimes were investigated, prosecuted, and punished appropriately. The civil legal system also worked, with Judge Martinez seeing through the HOA's overreach and issuing clear rulings based on law rather than preferences. The community worked too, with neighbors eventually coming together to stand against bullying once someone took the first step. I had been that someone, not because I was particularly brave or special, but because I was stubborn and convinced I was right. Sometimes that is enough. Sometimes that is all it takes. One person willing to stand up and say, "No, this is wrong, I will not comply, I will fight." Others had followed. Together, we had won. Not just in court, but in the way that really mattered. We had reclaimed our neighborhood from someone who saw it as her personal fiefdom to rule. We had restored common sense, basic fairness, and the principle that rules should serve people, not the other way around. The diesel tank still sits in my backyard, its double-walled construction gleaming in the summer sun. When winter comes and the power goes out, as it inevitably does in northern Michigan, that tank will keep my generator running. It will keep my house warm. It will keep my family safe. And every time I look at it, I will remember the battle it sparked, the injustice it revealed, and the victory it came to symbolize. Not just my victory, but a victory for every homeowner who has ever faced down an unreasonable HOA, every person who has stood up to a bully, every community that has chosen fairness over fear. Patricia Henderson tried to fine me for being prepared. She tried to bully me into compliance with rules that did not exist. She tried to use her position to impose her will on neighbors who had done nothing wrong. And in the end, she lost everything while I kept exactly what mattered: my property, my rights, my family, and my perfectly legal, fire chief approved, safety standard exceeding diesel tank. Sometimes the good guys win. Sometimes justice prevails. Sometimes standing up to the HOA president from hell actually works out. This was one of those times.